Sixth grade, lesson 8.7 is problem solving equations with fractions. And I know problem solving has you going, no more word problems, but you guys are getting good at it, so don't even worry, you've got this. We know our steps now. We read it, underline the question, circle the information given, draw the picture, and then solve it once we have made an equation out of it. And even in these, a lot of these, I think for this section, they're going to give us the equation too, because they're going to be those one-step equations we've been working on. I also know that when you hear equations with fractions, your nerves go up, but I think you're going to like this one because this is the lesson where they give you a trick on how to magically eliminate a fraction so that you can just deal with the whole number. So this is a nice little voila math magic trick that we can use so that we don't have to deal with fractions if we don't want to. All right, so here we go. Okay, so we have on canoe trips, people sometimes carry their canoes between bodies of water. Maps for canoeing use a unit of length called a rod to show the distance. Victoria and Mick, there they are, carry their canoe 40 rods. The equation 40 equals 2/11 d gives the distance d in yards that they carried the canoe. How many yards did they carry the canoe? You can use the graphic organizer to help you solve the problem. The question is, how many yards did they carry the canoe? The information we're given is they went 40 rods. That's the equal amount here. And then they gave the rest of it in our equation, so we don't even really have to do the work. 2/11 times the distance is what 40 rods equals. So we have our equation there, so we'll just circle that. They gave it to us. Here it is. And I need to find the distance. So we'll put distance here in yards. What is 40 rods in yards so that it's in a measurement that we are familiar with. Okay, so here's our issue here. We have our variable. It's being multiplied. Hang on, I'm going to pause this because the blue angels are flying over. Okay, back again. So loud, so loud. Sorry, that's the problem with living in the blue angel practice area. All right. Distance is being multiplied by 2/11. And we could use inverse operation, the opposite of multiply by 2/11, which would be divide by 2/11 to both sides of the equation, and just calculate with the fractions like we did in the previous lesson. However, if we didn't want to deal with the fraction, I'm going to show you a way, or this lesson is going to show you a way how you can get out of it. So I can take this denominator, since there's only one denominator in the whole equation, I'll take that denominator, and as long as I multiply every single term in the whole equation, this term and this term, by that denominator, I end up eliminating it. So I'm going to take this whole equation using the distributive property, now that you know the distributive property, and I'm going to multiply by 11. So I will multiply the 40 times 11, which is what they did here, to get 440. And then I will multiply 2/11 d by 11, and watch what happens here. I have 2/11. I'm just going to set the d aside for now. And then I'm going to multiply it by 11, also known as 11 over 1, right? I cross reduce. Oh, 11 goes into 11 once, 11 goes into 11 once. That's why I chose 11. I chose the denominator because it wants to cross reduce straight out. And I end up with 2 times 1 is 2, 1 times 1 is 1. I end up with 2d, right there, okay? So I multiplied by 11. Oops, you can't see that, by 11. Okay. Then, all right, hang on. Okay, had to pause for flyover again. Now I'm just down to one-step equation now with whole numbers now. So I have 2 times d. d is my variable. That's what I want to isolate. It's been multiplied by 2. The inverse, or the opposite of multiply by 2, is to divide by 2, but I must do that to both sides of the equation. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Oh, that's what they wanted us doing down here. And that leaves us with d. And 440 divided by 2 is going to be half of it, right? 220. D equals 220. Now, if you had said, I'd rather just leave it as a fraction and divide it, I'm perfectly comfortable doing that. Here's how that would look. I would divide 2/11 to both sides of the equation, so I would have 40 over 1 divided by 2/11. Keep, change, flip, cross reduce. 2 goes into 2 once and into 40 20 times. 20 times 11 is 220. 1 times 1 is 1. That is 220. So I came up with the same answer. 220 yards is our answer. So I wanted to show you this way too, so that your brain doesn't resist and say, no, I don't think that's going to be right. If I do that trick, I'm going to ruin it. Nope, if you do that trick, you're just fine. As long as we multiplied every term in the whole equation by the same number, then we still keep it balanced. And so we're okay, we're allowed to do that. Let's look at another one. All right, Trevor is making 2/3 of a recipe for chicken noodle soup. He adds half a cup of chopped celery. The equation 2/3 of a C, 2/3 times C equals 1/2 can be used to find the number of cups, C, of chopped celery in the original recipe. How many cups of chopped celery does the original recipe call for? We were given 2/3 of a cup for a recipe. He adds 1/2 cup of chopped celery, and they actually give us our equation. So we need to find how many cups of chopped celery. How many cups chopped celery? We'll solve the problem. Well, since they gave us the equation, we'll use it. 2/3 times the amount of cups equals 1/2. Okay, so now I have a feeling you are now about to ask me, Ms. Sanchez, in the last one you said I can multiply everything by the denominator, but here I have 2 denominators. Okay, that's okay, you can still use that trick. Remember when we looked at their least common multiple? Like if I counted by 3 and I counted by 2, at what point will they match? And so that's the least common multiple. We want the lowest number that they'll match at. So if I count by 3, I get 3, 6. And if I count by 2, I get 2, 4, 6. They both land on 6. That's the lowest number they match at. Let's use that. I know when you learned LCM and the lowest common multiple in the first place, you probably thought, what would I ever use that for? These are the things that we use those for. So they always come back at us as a useful tool. So I'm going to use that lowest common multiple. I'm going to multiply every term in this equation by 6. So I will do 2/3 times 6. And when you do that cross reduction, look what happens. I get 2 times 2 is 4. So I get 4C. And if I do 1/2 times 6, I do my cross reduction. 2 goes into that once. In your cross reduction, if it's one of the lowest common multiples of both of those numbers, you're going to always be able to cross reduce that bottom number to a 1. And that's why we use that. 1 times 3 is 3. So I end up with 3. Okay, now I have C, my variable, being multiplied by 4. The inverse operation of that is to divide by 4. Divide by 4. Both sides of the equation. And here's something, right? We were given fractions and 3/4 of a cup makes sense. If you end with an answer that is an improper fraction, sorry, not an improper fraction. This is a proper fraction. Little number, big number. The snowman is upright. He's fine. Leave it a fraction unless they ask you to turn it into a decimal. But when we do cooking, we do it in fractional measurements. So leave it as a fraction. That is your answer, 3/4 cups. Now, if this step feels like it's too much for your brain and you're just like, nah, I'm not ready for that little magic trick there. I'm not ready to eliminate these fractions. I can deal with them. All right, let's go ahead and take us through. If we had just said, I'm going to follow my one-step equation steps and just do it, then you're going to end up with C being multiplied by 2/3. The inverse or opposite of multiply by 2/3 is divide by 2/3 to both sides of the equation. That cancels out. 2/3 divided by 2/3 is just going to be 1. And now I have 1/2 divided by 2/3. We will keep, change, flip, the reciprocal here. Multiply straight across. I looked for cross reduction. I didn't see any cross reduction. Multiply straight across. 1 times 3 is 3. 2 times 2 is 4. And looky, looky, that's the same answer. So if this step makes sense to you and you're like, yeah, show me how to eliminate fractions, let me just do that, feel free to use that. If it doesn't, or if you're just perfectly comfortable dealing with fractions regardless, then go ahead and use that. It just gives you another option. So this lesson is still one-step equations. It's giving you word problems. Some of them do give you the equation, so that makes it even easier. But do take the steps and read through them. And then they're dealing with the fraction. So it's really good fraction practice that you can dust off those cobwebs for. But also, in case you want to know how to do it, it teaches you that new trick of being able to get rid of fractions. And some of you may really welcome that, and you can use that if it works well for you. Good luck.